the concrete make it look like as well. This one is facing how it's supposed to. Remember the one in Caesarea? Yeah.
Facing towards
Exactly. The sun is supposed to light up me, and it's not supposed to be in your eyes. Exactly. And having a nice view behind all these houses as well.
Yeah.
Anytime you see a theater in a city in this land, dating to Second Temple times, the time of the New Testament, it tells you have an intrusive Hellenistic population, worldview, taking root, shaping and changing the more indigenous, Torah-centered Jerusalem worldview. By the way, Josephus says there was a theater in Jerusalem too. Gospels don't mention Jesus going in it, but Josephus says there was one there too. In fact, we've even found tokens for the seats. These are assigned seats. You buy your seat as well. All right. A name like Sepphoris, that's not a Hebrew name, is it? That's the name we have in the text, Sepphoris. It tells you this is a site in this corridor of Hellenism or Roman penetration that ends up being kind of an anchor point. It was the capital of the Galilee. The capital, the central district, kind of middle of the road, you might say middle location, and connecting with the routes and the farmland around it. The architecture, let's say, is consistent with that. Herod, when Herod was here, this was the capital. When Herod died, the year was 4 BC. The local Jews, some of them, decided that they would come to Sepphoris, where it was not just the capital, but the sort of the army base, the center of economic and political control, and attack it, hoping that if they could knock Sepphoris down, they would drive or check or counter-check or push back this pagan influence in the land. Basically a revolt against Rome. Rome responded by basically taking the city out. You're trying to attack it, I'm going to take it out. And the city was destroyed in kind of that aftermath of that unrest when Herod died, and then immediately rebuilt. Rome saying, let me show you how much of an influence you had on our life. We're going to make it even better than it was before. So the city then immediately being rebuilt in those early years of the Common Era, starting in the year 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. It was being rebuilt. Now what that means is, and rebuilt on the Roman plan, more or less. Now what that means is, if you were a builder, you had a job. Yeah? If you were a builder, you had a job. And there are things, there are things that builders make that are rather routine, like your average frame house. And then there are things that builders make that need specialized builders. Like the wind farms with the big, or the Grand Coulee Dam, these kinds of things, or the 1,000-foot telephone or power, what do you call it, radio tower things, you know what I mean? These things.
Cell tower.
Not just anybody, cell tower. Not just anybody can build these. And teams come around, and go from spot to spot to build these. You go where the job is.
Iron workers.
Not everybody can cut stone the way Rome needs stone cut. Yeah?
God bless you.
Not everybody can. What it takes are specialized workmen in building materials, local building materials, specialized stone cutters, maybe specialized wood workers. You want to put a door in your house today, you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you can buy a full door, and you just get those little wedges that you kind of put in there to kind of even it up. I made my own door. Not really. Go buy 1x6 lumber. Start with that. See how far you get, right? Yeah, that's what my dad used to do, right? A little extra level of skill, right? That's what I'm talking about, those guys. Those guys. Every town has one. Probably father to son to grandson. They pass it on. Every little scrappy village in the first century would have had one. Every Palestinian village today has one or two of these guys. You don't need to be literate in reading and writing, but you need to be literate in reading the material. You have to be skilled in plan and design. You have to kind of have the blueprint up here. You have to know how to do the dimensions to make sure the roof stays on. You have to know what the slope of the ground is to make sure it's not going to come down in the next rainstorm. You know, these things, right? It's skill over time, skill in building. The word for these people, tekton. Tekton. Not everybody can do this. We get English words from that Greek word, like technology and some other things, right? Technician. Tekton. A skilled worker in local building materials who will be called upon to do things that normal homeowners or regular builders maybe can't quite figure out on their own. Make a lot of house calls, this guy does. You know, gets to know everybody in town. You know, if he's living in a village kind of small and nothing needs to be done, he'll go someplace else and do some work. Whatever needs to be done to make a living, these tektons. They're very good at what they do. I mean, really, with their hands. Just conceptually, between eye and hand, coordination to get this stuff up. Tekton. That's a Greek word. You know what a bad translation of tekton is? Carpenter. Because that ain't the building material down here. It is a little bit. Got a little bit of wood, but not much. Mostly you got stone cutting. And the Greek word is used for whatever the local building material is. It can be leather and glass as well, by the way. Little specialized crafts. But in this part of the world, it's mostly stone cutting. Mostly. The church father in the 2nd century, Justin Martyr, said that Jesus built yokes and plows, both out of wood. Yokes and plows. Probably, that's also tricky stuff, to know how to kind of string it together, these implements that have to undergo great stress out in the field, yeah? Jesus also said at one point, you know, whoever takes the plow, don't look back, and, you know, I've got this yoke, you can put it on you too, yeah? Uses these images. Actually, a lot of Jesus' parables are tekton building parables. You know, about building the house on the rock and not on the sand, the soft stuff is what he means. About the guy who built bigger barns because his crop was so big, he thought, the guy who built a watchtower and so on, and dug out a wine vat and then, you know, died that same night. There's a lot of building material in Jesus' parables, and he's sort of speaking what he knows. There's also a lot of agriculture in Jesus' parables, which you can sort of pick up as he walks these fields, wherever he happens to go, speaking the language that he knows. Let me throw one more thing on here before we walk a bit. You know, we don't have Sepphoris mentioned at all in the New Testament. We're going to see what Nazareth was like in a bit when we go up there in the 1st century. And the supposition is, and I think it's a good one, that when Joseph was trying to feed his family, he would come down here and do some work. The town is being built in those days when Jesus is little. The supposition is, and again, I think it's probably a good one, that when Jesus was old enough to follow him down here, it's about a 2-hour walk. Probably he came with. He learned it. As the oldest son, he was going to learn the craft of his father. He was going to spend a career being a tekton and pass it on to his son, according to the social mores and norms of Nazareth. That's what he would have been doing. And I can see Joseph coming down maybe every Sunday morning after the Shabbat is over, spending 2, 3, 4 days down here, walking back for Shabbat for many weeks, actually. This is where the jobs are. If he hears that work has to be done back up home, he'll do some work up there as well, but, you know, he needs to survive as well. That then brings Jesus from his youth up, exposed to a lot of different people that he wouldn't necessarily meet up in Nazareth. The guy is learning Hebrew from his mother's knee. All the parables that we have in all literature from the 1st century and 2nd century, all the parables, even when the story is written in Aramaic, the parable itself is always in Hebrew. That's the language of every day. Jesus is certainly learning Aramaic because that's the larger Semitic language kind of cementing Judea and Galilee together. He's got to know some Greek as well if he's down here in Sepphoris that has a intrusive Hellenistic population. This makes him a multicultural kid.